In just 3 years of marriage to Joni Lamb, Doug Weiss positioned himself to walk away with millions of dollars in property, assets, and ongoing income. 3 years, y'all. 3 years. From the time Doug married Joni in June 2023 to the time she died in May 2026, Doug Weiss went from a struggling counselor begging for TV airtime money to being co-owner of a $2.9 million beach condo in Florida, to being on the deed of Joni's lake house property, to having his heart-to-heart counseling programs broadcast free on Daystar, worth millions in advertising, to potentially being in Joni's revocable trust that controls her $11.7 million real estate empire. And the best part? Doug and Lisa Weiss are still business partners. So the Daystar money, the exposure, the property, it all benefits the Weiss family. This wasn't a marriage. This was a business acquisition, and it worked perfectly. Today, we're going to break down exactly how much Doug Weiss gained in just 3 years, how he positioned himself through property transactions, and why this was the most profitable 3 years of his life. Because y'all, Doug Weiss played the long game, and he won. Let's get into it. First, let me establish where Doug Weiss was before he married Joni Lamb. Doug ran heart-to-heart counseling ministries in Colorado Springs. He did counseling, wrote books, sold online courses, and did speaking engagements. But here's the problem. Doug needed TV exposure to grow his business, and TV airtime is expensive. According to Doug's own testimony, he was praying for money to buy TV slots. Someone gave him a donation, but that money wouldn't last long. Buying Christian TV airtime can cost $10,000 to $50,000 per month, depending on the network and time slot. So Doug was stuck. He had a counseling practice, but without TV exposure, he couldn't scale. He couldn't reach millions. He couldn't make real money. And that's when Marcus Lamb died. And Joni became vulnerable, lonely, and in need of help. Doug saw an opportunity. Doug married Joni in June 2023, barely 18 months after Marcus died. At the time, Joni owned 7 homes in 4 states worth $11.7 million total, Daystar television network, multi-million-dollar Christian TV empire, income streams from Daystar, salary, speaking, books, etc. Doug brought a counseling practice and a lot of ambition. And according to sources, there was supposedly a prenup protecting Daystar and Joni's assets. But as we're about to see, Doug found ways around that prenup. Now let me show you the property transactions that happened during Doug's 3-year marriage to Joni. These are public records. This is not speculation, this is fact. Transaction number 1, the Florida Beach condo, $2.9 million. Date, March 12th, 2026, just 2 months before Joni died. Property, Grand Dunes 2 condo, Miramar Beach, Florida, unit 1020. Purchase price, $2.9 million. Originally purchased September 2023. What happened? The property was transferred from Joni Trammell Lamb into Revocable Trust of Joni Lamb. But the deed shows the property is now owned by Weiss, Douglas, and Lamb Joni Revocable Trust. Y'all, do you see that? Doug Weiss's name is on the trust. This $2.9 million beach condo is now in a joint trust with Doug's name on it. That means Doug has legal claim to this property. Transaction number 2, the Lake House, Granbury, Texas. Property, 3452 Abe's Landing Drive, Granbury, Texas, on Brazos River. Original value, $814,000. Sold August 18th, 2025. What's important? According to property transaction discussions, Doug's name was on this transaction as a co-owner. So even though Joni owned this property before marrying Doug, when it was sold in August 2025, Doug had some ownership stake. Transaction number 3, the Georgia property. Date, March 25th, 2026, less than 2 months before Joni died. Property, Macon, Georgia home worth $365,000. What happened? Property was transferred into Revocable Trust of Joni Lamb and Lamb. This trust was created on March 11th, 2026. Brand new trust created just weeks before Joni died. Now here's what's critical. There was no existing trust before March 11th, 2026. Joni created a brand new revocable trust just weeks before she died, and properties started getting transferred into that trust. The question is Doug a beneficiary of that trust? Because if he is, he gets access to everything in it when Joni dies.
Now let me explain how Doug could have bypassed the prenup using the trust strategy. A prenup typically protects assets you had before marriage. But here's the loophole. Assets transferred during marriage into a joint trust are not covered by the prenup. So here's what appears to have happened. Step 1. Doug marries Joni, June 2023, with a prenup in place. Step 2. During the marriage, Joni starts transferring properties into a new revocable trust. Step 3. Doug's name gets added to the trust either as co-trustee or beneficiary. Step 4. When Joni dies, the trust assets go to the beneficiaries, which may include Doug. Step 5. The prenup is irrelevant because the assets are in the trust, not in Joni's personal name. This is a legal way to transfer wealth to a spouse without violating a prenup. And it looks like that's exactly what happened. Now, let me calculate how much Doug Weiss likely gained from his 3-year marriage to Joni Lamb. Direct property assets: Florida Beach condo, $2.9 million. Joint trust with Doug's name. Granbury Lake House, unknown amount from sale proceeds. Doug was co-owner. Potential trust beneficiary, access to remaining properties worth $8.8 million. Conservative estimate, Doug gets at least $2.9 million, the Florida condo. Likely estimate, Doug gets $5 to $7 million in property/cash. Indirect business benefits: free Daystar airtime. Heart-to-heart counseling became a Daystar original. Value: $500,000 to $1 million per year in free advertising. Over 3 years, $1.5 million to $3 million in free exposure. Increased counseling revenue. Daystar exposure equals more clients. Heart-to-heart charges $4,000 to $15,000 per intensive. Increased client base from Daystar exposure. Additional revenue: $500,000 to $1 million per year. Book sales and speaking. Daystar platform increased Doug's visibility. Additional revenue: $100,000 to $300,000 per year. Total indirect benefits: $2 to $4 million over 3 years. Grand total, conservative estimate, $4.9 million. Likely estimate, $9 to $11 million. Maximum estimate, $15+ million if Doug is primary trust beneficiary. Y'all, in just 3 years, Doug Weiss positioned himself to gain $10 to $15 million in assets, income, and business benefits. And remember, Doug and Lisa Weiss are still business partners. So the heart-to-heart money, that benefits both of them.
Now, let's revisit the prenup question. Joni told Jonathan and Susie, there's a prenup. Doug doesn't want Daystar. He's protected. But looking at these property transactions, it's clear. If there was a prenup, Doug found ways around it. How? Property transfers during marriage, not covered by prenup. Trust creation, trust assets bypass prenup. Joint ownership, adding Doug's name to properties. Texas community property law, anything earned during marriage is joint property. So either there was no prenup, Joni lied to Jonathan, or the prenup had loopholes. Doug exploited them. Either way, Doug got paid. Now here's what people need to understand. Doug and Lisa Weiss are still business partners. Even after the divorce, they run heart-to-heart counseling together. So when Doug got Daystar exposure, heart-to-heart got exposure. When heart-to-heart gets more clients, both Doug and Lisa benefit financially. When heart-to-heart sells books, courses, and intensives, both Doug and Lisa profit. So this wasn't just Doug benefiting, this was the Weiss family benefiting. Think about it. Doug gets property, $2.9 million plus beach condo. Doug gets potential trust benefits, $5 to $10 million. Heart-to-heart gets Daystar exposure, $3 million value. Heart-to-heart gets more clients, ongoing revenue. Lisa continues working with Doug, benefits from all of it. The Weiss family made out like bandits. And all it took was 3 years. All right, y'all, let me wrap this up. Doug Weiss married Joni Lamb in June 2023. In just 3 years, Doug got his name on a $2.9 million beach condo. Doug was co-owner of properties that got sold. Doug got his counseling programs on Daystar, millions in free advertising. Doug positioned himself as potential trust beneficiary, $5 to $10 million plus. Doug's business partner, Lisa, continues benefiting from heart-to-heart exposure. Total value, $10 to $15 million in 3 years. And the best part, Doug and Lisa Weiss are still working together. So the Weiss family wins. Meanwhile, Jonathan Lamb, Marcus's son, is exiled. Daystar's legacy is destroyed. Marcus's wishes are ignored. Joni died without reconciling with her son. This wasn't love. This was a business move. And it was the most profitable 3 years of Doug Weiss's life. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Do you think Doug married Joni for her money? Do you think the Weiss family planned this together? Do you think an autopsy should reveal whether Joni was manipulated? Share this with someone who needs to see it. Be blessed, y'all. And remember, when someone shows you a pattern, believe it. Doug Weiss showed us exactly who he is. I'll catch you in the next one.